Good day, ladies and gentlemen. So let me introduce myself. I'm Police Senior Master Sergeant Francisco V. Ancheta Jr. from Santa Barbara, Pangasinan. 35 years of age. I am graduated at University of Cordillera Bachelor of Science in Criminology in the year of 2016. I entered the service in 2017 and I worked in NCR Crime Laboratory Office in Camp Crame as a fingerprint examiner the year of 2020. And for my past 2 years experience, I already examined almost 30 fingerprint cases in some presented in courts. Recently, June 10, 2023, I received 2 specimens. One was unknown, lifted on a knife near the victim's body, and the other one is taken from the standard print of Mr. Cesar Lamtoso. This specimen is to determine if both specimens came from the same person. Comparing this print, I use magnifying glass for a clearer magnification in view, Your Honor. So the fingerprint comparison, they have 16 ridge similarities between Latin and plain impression, Your Honor. It composed of 5 ridge endings, 4 bifurcations, 2 dots, 2 short ridges, 1 delta, 1 core, and 1 island. And as you can see, the different ridge characteristics, the first one is ridge ending. It terminates the ridge of light, the point where a ridge ends abruptly. So next is the bifurcation, the single ridge which splits into 2 ridges going side by side or parallel to each other. Next is dot, the ridge formation in form of a dot or period. Short ridge, a simple ridge that has limited length. So delta is obviously located at the point of the divergence of the 2 type lines, and it's a point ridge formation at or directly in front. So core, technically, it is a point on a ridge formation located at the center or heart of a pattern. So last is island. Basically, a single friction ridge that continues for a short distance longer than the width and then ends, disconnected on both ends. And on the findings that I observed, it determines that the specimen taken from knife has exactly the same characteristics between the Latin print and plain impression of Mr. Lombroso, which means that the 2 prints that was compared were taken in the same right thumb print. What do you mean by epidermal ridges? So epidermal ridges refers to the grooves in the outermost layers of the skin, the palms of the hands, and soles of the feet where sweat glands open. Those ridges and the sweaty marks they leave are what we call fingerprints. Are fingerprint made up of ridges? Yes, Your Honor. A person's fingerprints are based on the patterns of skin ridges on the pads of the fingers. These ridges are also present on the toes, the palms of the hands, and the soles of the feet. So what are furrows? The furrows are depressions or canal between ridges, furrows, or those white colored in the fingerprint which is not ink. So what is meant by minutiae? So minutiae are major features of a fingerprint. Next is, of what value are the minutiae in fingerprint identification? So good quality fingerprint image may contain around 25 to 80 minutiae depending on the fingerprint scanner resolution and the placement of finger in the sensor. So minutiae can be defined as the points where the ridge lines end of fork. Next is, how many layers of skins are there? So skin is made up of 3 layers. First is the epidermis, which is the upper layer or outer layer of the skin. Second is the dermis, which is the lower of the inner layer of the skin. Next is, what is the average thickness of skin on the palmar side of young hand? approximately the average thickness of skin of young hen is 1.5 millimeter thick, Your Honor. So, next is, what is poroscopy? Poroscopy is the study of sweat pores present on the friction ridge of palmar in the plantar surface, and it's a method of personal identification introduced by Edmond Locard. So, is poroscopy a science of identification like fingerprints? Yes, Your Honor. Poroscopy is a method of personal identification in which the characteristics of sweat pores on the friction ridge impression of palmar and plantar surface are examined. What is ink impression? So, the intentional recording of the friction ridge skin using black printer's ink in a fingerprint ruler. The ridge characteristics of a particular individual can be formally recorded on a standard fingerprint card. Next one is, what is Latin print? Latin prints are usually indivisible to the naked eye and requires additional processing in order to be seen. This processing can include basic powder techniques or the use of chemicals. What are fingerprint pattern areas? So the pattern area is the part of a loop or whorl in which appear the core deltas in ridges, with which we are concerned in classifying. The pattern areas of loops in whorls are enclosed by type lines. Next is compound prints, like fingerprints used to establish identity. Palm prints are generally accepted by the forensic science community as a positive identification. Palm prints can be used for chemical, forensic, or commercial applications. Next is, what is a geoscopy? Geoscopy is a method of identification through the examination of the unique details and characteristics found along the ridge of individual fingerprint ridges. Next is, in fingerprint comparison, what is meant by apparent similarity? So the apparent similarities that have difference in which, in the judgment of the examiner, and it can be explained. Next question is there a specific number of points one must find in order to conclude a positive identification? Obtain an ink-readable fingerprint for each finger, recognize and classify the general ridge patterns, which is loops, whorls, and arcs, and apply them to the primary Henry FBI classification. Identify and compare friction ridge characteristics and compare two fingerprints with at least 10 points of identification. This question is, what are the basic premises of fingerprint identification? So it is classified in three basic principles. One is principle of individuality. Second is principle of permanency. And the last one is principle of infallibility. Next is fingerprint identification an exact science? If yes, then why? Would two examiners differ in their opinion? So forensics is a subclass of applied science. Fingerprint identification is undoubtedly a forensic science. Therefore, whether or not fingerprints is an exact science is a null argument. It can be neither exact or descriptive because it is not a pure science, it is an applied science. So, could you determine exactly the age of Latin impression? So there is no specific way to determine the time a Latin print was deposited on a surface. Next question is, what is Latin transfer card? The Jan's impression left on the an item through the transfer of perspiration, and oils. From the friction ridge to the item itself. So, next. How is Latin print lifting done? This is done by coating fingerprints with powder, lifting them, and, and then taking them to the forensic lab where they are compared to fingerprints in the database. Next is, what is transfer lifting tape? It is a double-sided and pressure-sensitive adhesive that contains a removable paper liner which is to join two substrates. Next is, what methods are employed in the development of Latin prints and how they work? Methods of developing a Latin prints is dusting, iodine foaming, silver nitrate development, and ninhydrin treatment. Next is, how long will a Latin print last? There is no specific way to know how long a Latin fingerprint will last. Next is, what is meant by smudge print? Is a smudge print the same as the print of no value? When printing on paper that is even slightly moist from humidity, ink can become smudge on the paper. Colors can run together, in text or images can be distorted. How many points of identification are found in a normal rolled impression? Basically, it is at upper thin prints. What is natural dissimilarity? Natural dissimilarity was noted in a comparison of fingerprints. It would be assumed the prints were made by different fingers. So what are the focal points in a fingerprint? Of what value are they? These points are called delta and core. Next is, can be fingerprint be forged? Definitely no, Your Honor. Our fingerprint is absolute and cannot be forged because it is a positive and conclusive. Next is, can you tell in all instances that a print has been forged? Yes, by examining it. As a skilled fingerprint technician, I already have that knowledge to identify if a fingerprint is a perfect replica or fake. Next is it possible that the prints you found in the envelope are forged prints? Yes, but in order to fake a fingerprint, one needs an original first. So next is, what is ninhydrin and how does it work? Ninhydrin reagent, which reacts with an amino acids in the foil from fingers to produce a blue-purple stain pattern. Next question is, what is the scientific term for ninhydrin? There is two scientific terms in ninhydrin. First is dihydroxyndine. Next one is dione. So next is, what is iodine fuming method and how does it work? The mechanism involves sublimation of iodine crystals to produce violet iodine fumes, which are absorbed into fingerprint mark residue, resulting in yellowish brown finger marks. Last question is, what is sebaceous oil? Sebaceous oil or sebum is an oily substance that protects your skin from drying out.
So, my name is Eliseo B. Aquino, and I works as a fingerprint examiner at Urdaneta City Regional Crime Laboratory Office. I am currently 38 years of age and proud graduate at this university way back 2006 at the age of 21. Now, I work as a fingerprint examiner at the Philippine National Police for almost 12 years, and I already examined almost 100 fingerprint cases, and some of those cases were already been presented at the trial court. One of the recent case was used last June 9, 2023, and I received two specimens. One was unknown, lifted on a plate found in the crime scene, and the other one is taken from the standard print of the accused. This specimen is to determine if both specimens came from the same person. The unknown print and standard print, as you can see, there are many similarities of ridges of the two. For example, the two prints have the same amount and place of bifurcation, dot, ridge ending, delta, core, short ridge, and island. So bifurcation is a single ridge which is split into two ridges going side by side or parallel to each other, while ridge ending is a termination of the ridge of like, and delta is a point on the ridge formation at or directly in front, or core is a point on a ridge formation located at the center or heart of a pattern. So question number 1. What do we mean by epidermal ridges? So refers to the grooves in the outermost layer of skin on the palms of hand and sole of the feet, sweat glands. And are fingerprint made up of ridges? Yes, fingerprint are made up of ridges. As you can see, those lines in your fingertips, that's we call ridges. What are furrows? So furrows are the shallow grooves or lines found between the ridges on the surface of the skin, particularly on the fingertips, palms, soles of the feet, and toes. And they work in conjunction with the ridges to enhance grip and contribute the unique pattern of fingerprint. So what is meant by minutiae? In the field of biometrics, minutiae refers to the certain small features of a fingerprint image. In certain security settings, computer may use small elements of a fingerprint shape to identify an individual for access. And what value are they minutiae in fingerprint identification? These minutiae points are used to determine the uniqueness of a fingerprint image and how many layers of skin are there. Our skin is made up of 3 layers: the epidermis, dermis, and the hypodermis. What is the average thickness of skin on the palmar side of young hands? The average thickness of skin on the palmar side palm of young hand can vary depending on factors such as age, gender, and individual differences. However, in general, the skin on the palmar side of the hand is considered to be thicker than the skin on the other parts of the body. What is poroscopy? So poroscopy is the study of sweat pores present on the friction ridges of palmar and the plantar surface, and is a method for personal identification. Sporoscopy is a science or identification like fingerprint. Yes, poroscopy is a method of personal identification in which characteristic of sweat pores on the friction ridge impression of palmar and plantar surface are examined. What is ink impression? An ink impression, also known as an ink fingerprint impression, refers to a method of capturing a person's fingerprint using ink and surface, typically a fingerprint card or paper. What is Latin print? A Latin print is an impression of friction skin of the finger or palms of the hand and has been transferred to another surface invisible to the naked eye and requires special techniques to make them visible and suitable for analysis. What are the fingerprint patterns and patterns areas? So, fingerprint patterns refers to the overall arrangement and structure of ridges and furrows on the surface of a fingerprint. Can palm prints like fingerprints used to establish, identify? Fingerprint patterns refers to the general formation or arrangement of the ridges and valleys present in a fingerprint. These patterns are classified into several categories based on their overall structure and characteristic. What is agioscopy? Agioscopy is a method of identification through the examine of the unique details and characteristics found along the edges of individual fingerprint ridges. And in the fingerprint comparison, what is meant by apparent dissimilarity? Apparent dissimilarity refers to the visual differences or inconsistencies observed between two fingerprint impressions during the process of analysis and comparison. Is there a specific number of points to one must find in order to conclude identification? Obtain an ink readable fingerprint for each finger, recognize and classify the three ridge patterns, which is the loop, whirl, and arches, and apply them to the primary Henry FBI classification. Identify and compare ridges, characteristic, and compare two fingerprint with at least 10 points of identification. What are the basic premises of fingerprint identification? It is classified in three basic principles. First is the principle of individuality. Second is the principle of permanency. And the last one is the principle of infallibility. And 18. Is fingerprint identification an exact science? If yes, why would two examiners differ in their option? So forensic is a subclass of applied science. Fingerprint identification is undoubtedly a forensic science. Therefore, whether or not fingerprint is an exact science is a null argument. It can be neither exact nor descriptive because it is not pure science, it is applied science. Could you determine exactly the age of Latin impression? There is no scientific way to determine the time and Latin print was deposited on a surface. What is Latin print transfer card? The chance impression left on an item through the transfer of perspiration and oils from the friction-rich skin to the item itself. How is Latin print lifting done? This is done by coating fingerprints with powder, lifting them, and then taking them to the forensic lab where they are compared to the fingerprints in the database. What is transfer lifting tape? It is a double-sided and pressure-sensitive adhesive that contain a removable paper which is used to join two substraces. What methods are employed in the development of Latin prints and how do they work? Methods of developing a Latin print dusting, iodine, or iodine fuming, silver nitrate development, and ninhydrin treatment. How long will Latin print last? There is no scientific way to know how long a Latin fingerprint will last. And what is meant by smudge print? Is a smudge print the same as the print of no value? When writing on paper that is even slightly moist from humidity, it can become smudge on the paper, color can run together, and text or image can be distorted. How many points of identification are found in a normal rolled impression? It's upper 10 prints. What is the natural dissimilarity? If, if just one dissimilarity was noted in a comparison of fingerprints, it will be assumed the fingerprints were made by different fingers. What are the focal points in fingerprint? Of what value are they? These points are called delta and the core. Can be fingerprint forged? Definitely no. Our fingerprint is absolute and cannot be forged because it is positive and conclusive. Can you tell in all instances that print has been forged? Yes, by examining it. Because as a skilled fingerprint technician, I already had that knowledge to identify if a fingerprint is perfect replica or a fake. It is impossible that the prints you found and developed are forged print. Yes, in order to fake a fingerprint, one needs an original first. What is ninhydrin and how does it work? Ninhydrin reagent, which react with amino acid in the oil from finger to produce a blue-purple stain pattern. What is the science term for ninhydrin? It's the hydroyidane and dione. What is iodine fuming method and how does it work? The mechanism involves sublimation of iodine crystal to produce violet iodine fumes which absorb onto finger mark residue resulting in yellowish brown finger marks. What is sebaceous oil? Sebaceous oil is sebum is an oily substance that protects your skin from dying out.
So, good day, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is Kayla May Mendoza Antolin, 36 years old, and I was born on September 11, 1987. I graduated in PNPA in the year 2007 and at the age of 22. I entered the Philippine National Police as a lieutenant. Year 2011, I worked in the Federal Bureau of Investigation and become a fingerprint analysis and examiner till now. Already examined almost of it are presented on court. Similarities is that uh, bifurcation, single side by side or parallel to each other. Then the number 11 is the core. Is a point on a ridge formation located at the center or 12 is the bifurcation. Single ridge, which splits into two ridges going side by side or parallel. Question number 1. Sir, is epidermal ridges. Epidermal ridges refer to the raised patterns of skin, soles of the feet and toes. These ridges are also commonly known as arcs, which are used in forensic science for individual recognition. Then 3, forests are essentially the spaces or valleys that separate the along with the ridges and contribute to the uniqueness of an individual's fingerprint. 4, refers to the unique details or characteristics found within the ridge patterns of a fingerprint. These minutiae, points such as ridge endings and ridge bifurcations, are used for individual identification and comparison purposes. 5. Minutiae can define as the points where the ridge lines end of fork. 6 is that there are 3 layers. 7 is according to criteria including age, gender, and individual variances, the typical thickness of the skin on the palmar side palm of a young hand can differ. But generally speaking, the skin on the palmar side of the hand is thought to be thicker than the skin on other body parts. 8. Horoscopy has been performed using optical microscopes or specialized fluoroscopy lenses to magnify and observe the sweat pores on fingerprint impressions. Then the number 9 is widely accepted and scientifically proven method of identification due to their uniqueness to each individual. Then 10, ink impressions are commonly used in forensic and law enforcement applications, especially when electronic. Number 10. What is an ink impression? Ink impressions are commonly used in forensic and law enforcement applications, especially when electronic fingerprint capture devices or scanners are not available or practical. Number 11. What is Latin print? Latin prints are an important source of evidence in forensic investigation as they can link individuals to crime scenes, objects, or other places of evidence. 12. What are fingerprint patterns and pattern areas? The arrangement and structure of the ridges and furrows on the surface of a fingerprint are referred to as fingerprint patterns. These patterns or regions play a key role in the distinctiveness of fingerprints and are crucial in forensic investigations for identification. Number 13. The ridges and valleys found in a fingerprint are generally arranged or formed into patterns called fingerprint patterns according to their general structure and traits. These patterns are divided into a number of categories. 14. Edgescopy is a technique for identifying people by looking at the distinctive features and nuances that can be found along the edges of individual fingerprint ridges. So number 15, apparent dissimilarity is an essential aspect of the fingerprint comparison process as it prompts further scrutiny and investigation by experts. 16. There is no predetermined minimum threshold of details or points needed to confirm a positive identification in fingerprint analysis. 17. The foundation for fingerprint analysis and identification is set by the fundamental principles of fingerprint identification, often known as the basic premises. These assumptions serve as the foundation for the validity and individuality of fingerprints as a biometric identification method. Number 18. Though it is not a precise science, fingerprint identification is regarded as a very trustworthy and accurate science. 19. A latent impression, a fingerprint that was accidentally left on a surface, cannot be precisely dated. There are no reliable ways to precisely calculate the amount of time that has passed since a latent impression was deposited. 20. It allows forensic experts to transport the prints to a laboratory or examination facility for further analysis, comparison, and potential identification. 21. Latent prints are transferred from surfaces to a suitable media for preservation and examination through a procedure called latent print lifting. 22. It is a commonly used at crime scenes on various surfaces like glass, plastic, metal, or paper where fingerprints may be left behind by individuals involved in criminal activities. 23. It's worth noting that the selection of the development method depends on factors like the nature of the surface, the age of the print, and the resources available in the forensic laboratory. 24. Latent prints, which are unseen fingerprints left on surfaces, can last for a variety of times, depending on the environment and the surface in questions. 25. Smudging can happen when a finger moves or slides across a surface that contains a wet or viscous substance such as ink, oil, sweat, or dirt. Number 26 is during the analysis of a rolled fingerprint, forensic experts examine the pattern type such as lobes, whorls, or arcs, and locate and compare the minutiae points present in the print. So 27, it acknowledges that no two individuals have the exact same ridge patterns. Ridge endings, ridge bifurcations, and other minutiae characteristics present in their fingerprints. 28. Focal points also assist in distinguishing different variations and subtypes of patterns within the same category. 29. Fingerprint identification remains one of the most real. 31. It is theoretically possible that the prints found and developed could be forged prints. Fingerprints examination involves a combination of scientific analysis, expert judgment, and comparison to known prints or the databases if there are reasons to suspect forgery, such as inconsistencies, unnatural patterns, or other evidence suggesting tampering. Further investigation and analysis would be necessary to ascertain the authenticity of the prints. 32. Ninhydrin is a chemical reagent commonly used in the development of latent fingerprints on porous surfaces. It reacts with the amino acids present in fingerprint residue, specifically targeting the amino acids compounds containing primary amines. When Ninhydrin is applied to a surface containing latent prints. It reacts with the amino acids, producing a purple or brownish color, which makes the latent prints visible. 33. The scientific term for ninhydrin is 2-dehydroxyindane 1,3-deone. The iodine fuming method is a technique used to develop latent fingerprints on non-porous surfaces such as glass, metal, or plastic. In this method, solid iodine crystals are heated, producing iodine vapors. The vapors react with the fatty acids and oil present in the latent print residue, causing a chemical reaction that results in the formation of brownish iodine crystals on the surface. These crystals enhance the visibility of the latent prints and allow them to be photographed or lifted for further analysis. And last number is sebaceous oil, also known as sebum, is an oily substance produced by the sebaceous glands in the skin. It acts as a protective barrier and lubricant for the skin and hair. Sebaceous oil can be naturally present in fingerprint residue and may contribute to the visibility and preservation of latent prints.
Greetings to all of you. I'm Senior Master Sergeant Abalos, a police officer of Rosales, Pangasinan. I graduated criminology in Pinma University, Pangasinan, year 2006. I entered criminology when I was 22 years old. As my dedication to my career, I promote and mastered fingerprint of identification. I handle many cases like robbery, murder, and rape. So through the use of fingerprint identification, I uncovered the real identity of the suspect. And I'm currently 40 years old. I'm still handling cases that has connection in fingerprint identification. Dun nga sa combat dun sa latent print saka sa pre-impression. So as we can see, the similarity of latent print and print impression, we can see here that it has bifurcation or a forking of the ridges, island known as a short ridge, and bifurcation again, a forking of ridges, and ridge ending, it is the termination of the ridge. Next sa question. What do you mean by the epidermal ridges? Epidermal ridges are the ridges in the epidermis layers of our skin. Are fingerprint made up of ridges? Yes, they are made up of ridges and furrows. What are furrows? These are the depression and canal between our ridges. What is meant by minutia? Minutia is the location of our ridge that become discontinue. Of what value are they minutia in fingerprint identification? So the value of minutia in fingerprint identification is they form a pattern like bifurcation, short ridge, spurs, and many more. How many layers of skin are there? So we have 3 layers of skins called epidermis, dermis, and hypodermis. What is the average thickness of skin on the palmar side of young hands? So the thickness of skin on the young hands is 1 to 4 millimeter. What is poroscopy? Poroscopy is the study of set pores. Is poroscopy a science of identification like fingerprints? Yes, because poroscopy used to identify a person through the studying of set pores. What is an impression? Impression is the recorded friction ridge in the distal joint. Next na, Bads. What is latent print? Latent print is a print that is indivisible in our naked eye. That is caused by the oily matters. Number 12, what are fingerprint patterns and pattern areas? pattern areas, it is the loops which appears the delta and core, and fingerprint pattern are the form ridges in our fingerprint. For example, tinted arc, plain arc, loops, and whirl. 13, can palm prints like fingerprint used to establish identity? Yes, it can use to establish identity because palm print also used to identify the prints of a person. 14, what is idioscopy? Idioscopy is the characteristic of the ridge edge. 15, in fingerprint comparison, what mean by apparent dissimilarity? Apparent dissimilarity is the one print made by different fingers. 16, is there a specific number of points one must in order to conclude positive identification? Yes. 17, what are the basic premises of fingerprint identification? So the basic premises of fingerprint identification are principle of individuality, principle of infallibility, principle of permanency. 18, fingerprint identification is a science? If yes, then why would two examiners differ in their opinion? Because it differs their opinion because we know that fingerprint is also an applied science. 19, could you determine exactly the age of Latin print impression? Yes, through the examining of morphology. 20, what is Latin print transfer card? So Latin print transfer card is we use a adhesive tip to transfer a prints into a card. How is Latin print lifting done? So it done through use of through lifting the print by using adhesive tip uh, and and ano ba yun? And moving it in the card. 22, what is transfer lifting tape? So transfer lifting tape is transferring the prints into the tape and move in it in the card. 23, what methods are employed the development of Latin prints and how do they work? So the methods used in developing the Latin print is ninhydrin method, iodine filming, and many more. Next question, Buds. How long will a Latin print last? According to what I researched, it long at least 40 years. 40 years never been touched. 25, what is meant by smudge print? Smudge prints the same as the print of no value? Yes, because smudge print is the prints that is badly formed or distorted. How many points of identification are found in normal roll prints? Up 10 prints. What is natural dissimilarity? So natural dissimilarity is they say that no person have the same prints. 28. What are the focal prints in fingerprints? Of what value are they? So the focal prints is called the delta and core. So the value of it is to determine if our prints is loops or whirl. Can the fingerprint be forged? No. Can you tell in all instant that print has been forged? It can forge through the use of high technology. 31. It is possible that prints you found and developed are forged prints. No, because we know that it hard to forge a prints, especially in Latin prints. What is ninhydrin and how does it work? So ninhydrin is react with the amino acid and produce oil in the fingerprint, which produce purple finger Latin print pala. Latin print. 33. What is science term for ninhydrin? 2,2-dioxandan 1,3-dione. What is iodine filming method and how does it work? So the iodine filming method work through the iodine filming box. Then 35, what is sebaceous oil? Sebaceous oil is oil that can protect our skin from drying out. That's all.